All right, I've finally got these things all laced up. Let's see if a $5 piece of fabric has just fixed a $160 flagship Nike tennis shoe. Here we go. Hey, what's up? Zach here. Now, if you've been paying attention to new Nike sneaker releases, or if you've just consumed any videos on my channel recently, chances are you've caught a glimpse of the new Nike React Vapor NXT and seen just how much cool new tech is stuffed in this shoe. And you've probably also noticed that none of that tech really matters because the shoe has a giant Achilles heel in the form of a super thin plastic tongue that makes the shoe virtually unplayable because it feels like you're dragging a weight with an elastic band. And as a foot doctor, I thought if I could just fix the tongue, maybe I could make these shoes play as well as the rest of the shoe should on paper. And more importantly, perform as much as its price tag would suggest at $160 US. So to try and fix Nike's flagship shoe, I'm going to swap its tongue with the tongue of my favorite Nike tennis shoe, the Nike Air Zoom GP Turbo, then take it for a test drive on court and see, did I fix the Nike React Vapor NXT? Let's get to work. Okay, so this shoe build is going to start with getting our donor tongues off of the GP Turbo. This process is straightforward, but also pretty delicate, as you need to get the stitching between the tongue and the upper off, but not the stitching that holds the actual tongue together. So for this, I'm using a number 62 surgical blade to get in that really small space. Now that these tongues are off, I'm just lining them up with the Vapor NXT uppers. I actually had half a mind to keep the elastic tongue too, just to use as a compression layer, but it just makes the shoe way too bulky and crowded in there. So instead I'm going to cut the elastic out right up to the lace line, right where those shoelace eyelets sit. Alright, so I now have my donors and my recipient upper ready. What I need to do now is choose where to tack the tongue down at before stitching it. For this build, since the React Vapor NXT is such a heavy shoe, I'm going to err on the side of a longer tongue, almost like the Rafa Nadal Customs, just to give me as much security as possible. And like I said, before I stitch these, I'm going to just tack the tongues down with a couple simple ties, just to hold them in the position that I want. This will make stitching them so much easier. And now that these are positioned where I like them, I'm going to fold the sides of the tongue, making them double thickness for a really secure seam. And for making this seam, I'm using a sewing awl. I actually love this instrument because you can stitch in really tight spaces. The awl pulls the thread through the two surfaces, then creates a loop to put that free end of the thread through, which then makes an interlocking stitch. The same technique, coincidentally, that we use to sew ruptured Achilles tendons, and the same concept that Nike Flyweave is based on. And of course, I don't want this build to become another slipper tongue, so I'm just stitching the bottom, right, and left. That way the tongue has some movement and degrees of freedom. And now I'm just stressing my seam, just making sure there's no weak spots, and it looks pretty solid. I think it's time to get these on the court and test them out. And reminder, if you want to see more custom sneaker builds, make sure you subscribe so you don't miss a thing. All right, I've finally got these things all laced up. Let's see if a $5 piece of fabric has just fixed a $160 flagship Nike tennis shoe. Here we go. Already the shoe feels much roomier, even though the tongue is thicker and more padded. I guess just the nature of a one piece that the shoe feels a little bit more constrictive, whereas now with the three piece, it actually feels a little roomier, but already the tie down feels much, much, much better. So already with the new tongue, I have a ton more confidence moving front to back and side to side. I don't have nearly as much of those fears of rolling or just that feeling of rolling. Also, the shoe doesn't feel as heavy anymore because the whole shoe is encased now, so it's solid under my foot. Now I'm actually starting to be able to feel that nice combination of React foam and Phylon under my foot because the shoe's more secure. One thing I'm not noticing much more of in this shoe with the new tongue is speed. Even on the suicide test, only about 14.84 seconds, which is not much different than the old Nike React Vapor NXT, the original ones with the elastic tongue. It was just still a pretty decent time for such a hefty shoe, but it really does show you that tongue is really helping you more in the side-to-side direction and in the up and down direction, because now if you look at the serve test, 26 centimeters of serve height versus only 18 on the original Nike Vapor NXT with that elastic tongue. So you can see here where this tongue is really benefiting you, and in some areas where it's just kind of eh. I think if I had to describe these shoes, it would be a more nimble Nike Vapor Cage 4, which I think was the original intention of the shoe in the first place. I still think they are wasting that lightweight React Nike foam on such a heavy shoe. However, now, yes, this feels to me like a true upgrade from the Vapor Cage 4. These are still not my favorite shoes in the world. They still are a little bit hefty, and the uppers, now that they're actually pretty solid on my foot, are actually just a little bit stiff. That fly weave and that DuraGuard wrapped all the way around is just a little bit cumbersome and stiff on my foot. However, they're definitely now right under that rung of the GP Turbo and the Nike Vapor Pro. So at that pretty crude point, you can kind of see where the shoe is really starting to shine now. When I'm getting low for balls, I'm able to jump back up a lot easier. Much, much, much better with the new tongue. I think if there's one thing I've learned from this custom shoe build, that sometimes simpler is just better. And just proving my point, look at Rafa Nadal and Kei Nishikori. They both play in pretty simple setup shoes compared to the current models. And I will bet you at some point on tour, you'll see a pro playing with the Vapor NXT in a modified tongue, because right now the only pro playing in it is Aryna Sabalenka, and I'm sure that they want more pros with these on their feet so they can get their flagship shoes in front of more eyeballs at big tournaments. But remember, Nike isn't the only company making those secret pro custom shoe models. Now, if you want to see how I was able to recreate one of Adidas's most famous pro custom models, make sure you click into the video up above and subscribe down below. I'll see you in the next video.